A very, very good morning to everyone who's listening, and I'm super excited to be here. And just like I promised, I am back here after a few more minutes to actually keep talking to you about the advertising industry and the price that we women have actually paid because of the perfect woman that has been advertised by the advertising industry. Now, you're tuned into the sunrise with me, Sarah, right here on Relax Radio, and I'm super excited to be here on a Monday morning. Well, this is the second hour of my show, and I have a lot of interesting and fun content for you. So make sure you stay tuned because like I said, I have a lot of fun things coming your way, right? Um, if you want to be a part of this conversation, if you have any thoughts, any ideas, any opinions that you want to share with us, well, make sure you text me on 07852473473 because we have a lot of things to talk about. There's a lot of opinions that I want to hear as well, especially because Relax Radio is all about you. It's about it being interactive. It's about knowing your perspective, knowing your perception, knowing your opinion on everything that we talk about. Okay, so like I said, I'm super excited to be here to talk to you about everything and anything, from science to technology to health to entertainment, gossip, whatever it is, we have it all here, right here on Relax Radio. So make sure you follow us on our socials, which is Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, to make sure you know everything about what we're doing, everything about what we're talking as well. Make sure you do that because it is going to definitely help you because it'll help you stay updated. It will help you be informed about everything that's happening right here in the United Kingdom, but also around the world as well. And while you're at it, make sure you download our app from the Google app, the Google Play Store, and the Apple App Store as well. So you can have our app on your Apple iOS device and your Android device, and that way you can connect. You can be a part of our shows anytime you want. Okay. So make sure you do that because it will be my absolute pleasure to have you on this show, and also to make sure I get to know your thoughts and opinions on everything we're talking about. Okay, but let's get into it. Let's talk about the advertising industry, how it has sold us this perfect ideal of a woman, and how that has actually, resulted in a lot of us not feeling that great about ourselves, and also in the fact that there is a lot of ideals and there's a lot of expectations for women out there. Okay, now, like I said, the advertising industry makes a lot of profit based on these ideas of perfection and beauty, because that's what advertising is about. It's about being perfect, it's about being convenient, it's about being beautiful. And when it comes to women's products, we've seen this a lot, especially when it comes to various products ranging from cosmetics to lingerie to household products, whatever it is that you name, there will always be this woman who is happy, who is very attractive, who has the perfect body, who's, you know, literally 100 out of 100 in everything, okay? And we've seen that, right? We've experienced it ourselves, because we would always have certain people who comment on, the way we look, about the fact that we've gained weight. I've had like my certain aunts telling me that, hey, you've gained weight, you've gotten fat. Well, to be quite honest, it is the middle of a pandemic. We're all going through a lot of, we're all struggling. We all have a lot of anxiety and stress because these times are very uncertain. We don't really know what's going to happen. So yeah, obviously I've been stuck at home as well. And that's a thing, right? Because when the advertising industry has actually advertised these ideals of the perfect woman, what kind of body you should have, what kind of clothes you should have, what kind of lifestyle you've had, that actually affects a lot of women out there. Because look, the best example of this is when, if you take modeling campaigns, if you take, the advertising industry in general, the idea of a perfect woman, right? The idea of a perfect woman is this woman who's size 8, who's fair, who has flawless skin, who's beautiful, who has white teeth, blonde hair, which is really ridiculous because look, no one out there is going to be size 8. No one out there is going to have white teeth and blonde hair. We're human. And the thing is, when you're human, you have flaws, and it's not like everyone can have smooth skin. It's not like you can anyway have, flawless skin, because it's basically impossible. Look, even our environment out there is polluted, right? So there are so many dust particles, there's so many different things that, you know touch our skin. And because of that, obviously, it's not like you or I could have flawless white skin. And have a size 8 figure, especially in the middle of a pandemic. So a lot of these ideals are actually quite ridiculous. They don't make a lot of sense, and they're quite ironic because um end of the day, it's very unachievable. We're humans, and what? It's not like you can have these Barbie doll figures, right? So the thing is, even though they've advertised it, and even though it's very unrealistic, because we're constantly seeing them everywhere, whether you go to a laundry shop, whether you go to get makeup, you always see these really beautiful women out there, and you begin to think, look, maybe there's something wrong with me, because this is how the advertising industry actually makes a profit. you know they advertise this idea of this perfect woman who's like extremely beautiful, who's loved by everyone, who's very kind, who's very selfless, who always puts other people's needs before hers. And because of that, they're amazing, they're perfect, this is what you would consider the perfect woman. And how it affects us is because when we're constantly seeing this perfect ideal of a woman, when they're always telling us, it doesn't matter if you've just given birth, you should still have that perfect body. Like you know how ridiculous that sounds. Like, how can you have a perfect body as soon as you've given birth? Like, your body takes a lot of time to adjust and get back to normal, right? So because of that, it's very very it's very unrealistic, all these expectations of bodies that we have. So and we know that this is how the advertising industry actually makes a profit. They take these unrealistic views, they promote them, they advertise them, and people actually tend to believe it. Because when it comes to advertising, it's more about appealing to the male eye. It's about appealing to what kind of wants and needs that men have, right? So even now, even though we've sort of progressed in terms of advertising, even though we've progressed in terms of inclusivity and whatnot, when it comes to advertising plus size bodies, they tend to actually advertise these bodies of women that are actually largely accepted by society. And look, I know they always use this whole notion of, we have diversity, we have inclusivity, because we include all body types, we include all ethnicities, different complexions of skin and whatnot. But the thing is, even then, chances are you'd probably pick like a size 10, or if anything, a size 12 would be the largest, right? And the thing is, it's actually quite ironic, because not a lot of women have bodies that are a size 10, a size 12, or a size 8. In fact, it's just this minority of women who have these body types. And even if they don't have these body types, then we place these buttons on them where we tell them, look, starve yourself, get this body, be happy. It doesn't matter if you're going through so many other mental health issues. You have to smile and be okay for everyone else out there, because that is your role as a woman. That's basically what you have to do, right? And a lot of these ideals are actually very very harming. Now, like I said earlier as well, we have a lot of these harming ideals for men as well. Things like being strong, being vulnerable, not being vulnerable, rather, being strong, not letting people know about your emotions, not talking about your emotions, which is actually probably the worst way in which you can help someone who's going through a lot of problems. So, like I said, when there are these ideals, when there are these thoughts and narratives about how people should be, it's very, very detrimental to society. Now, they've also portrayed this thing called a happy housewife, and we've seen this a lot back in the 1900s, 1800s as well. This woman who was always well dressed, happy, always taking care of her children, um, never getting mad at, or never getting angry at a husband, or even angry at things. It doesn't matter how stressed and frustrated they are, you have to all be happy and just be just act like there aren't bigger problems in the world, which is kind of which is kind of the whole image that they're trying to portray right now. And for decades, marketing actually left women feeling like they must live up to these punishing ideals. And to be honest, they still do, right? How many of us actually feel like we need to live up to these ideals of all these women that are marketed? We need to live up to these ideals of not having any, negative emotions, always being happy, always, pretending like we don't have other problems. And The best way I can actually put this into words is when Billie Eilish actually appeared on the cover of Vogue's June issue, where she was wearing a corset and this magnificent set of platinum blonde curls. Um, a lot of people were actually shocked by by what she was wearing. They were going on social media, and they were very, very unforgiving because they were calling her out. They were saying a lot of really rude, mean things to her, and they were just saying, oh, look, like, what happened to you, why you like showing off your body and whatnot, right? But the thing is, Billy was actually unfazed by all of these, all the criticism that she got, because she's an adult, right? She has every right to dress as she prefers, and at that moment, she just wanted to wear a corset. So, she was basically, in effect, claiming her womanhood. She was claiming her adulthood and her right to present herself in any way that makes her feel good. She was growing up, and she wasn't giving in. So when women finally make these decisions for themselves, when women finally decide, hey, I'm not going to stick to these ideals of what beauty should be, when I'm not going to stick to these ideals of how I should dress and what kind of mood I should have, whether I should be always happy and act like I have no emotions at all and I should always be selfless. Women nowadays actually sort of say, look, I don't have to live up to all these ideals. I don't have to do everything that is expected of me. I'm my own person. I can live up to whatever I want. But the thing is, when women do act out and when they finally do make their decisions, a lot of people on the internet actually have a lot to say about it. And the thing is, if I can do what I want to, then why is everyone else disappointed? Because ultimately, my life goal, or my my main accomplishment in life isn't about trying to make other people happy. It's about doing what I want. It's not about trying to please everyone and fit into um everyone's aspect, or everyone's perception of what is a good woman or what is a perfect woman. Right? End of the day, we're also human. We're allowed to make our own choices. We're allowed to do what we want. So then there was this very obvious question of, why were people so annoyed about the fact that Billie Eilish was doing whatever she wanted? She's an adult, she's grown up, she can do whatever she wants. Now, stay tuned, because we'll be back to talk about this and a lot of other things that women have had to deal with simply because of the advertising industry, simply because of you know, some of these perceptions that have been promoted and endorsed by the advertising industry. So make sure you stay tuned, because we'll be right back after this small break.
The valuations that you place on an asset are always behind you. It's always in hindsight. It's never in front of you. And that's one of the challenges, right? Because you're always valuing what happened yesterday. And what you need is what's going to happen tomorrow. What am I saving or investing for? Why am I doing it? When will I need the money? And how much money do I need? Yeah. So that's quite important, because when you're looking at your net worth, you got to start with saying, well, what do I want my net worth to be, so that there's a goal, and then work backwards. How do I get there? And if I can start with £50 or $50 a week, if I save that every week, and you can go online and use calculators online. I don't have to teach you the maths behind it, but you can say, okay, and if I get a 3% return and I put this away for how long will it take to reach my goal? And that's called just this basic cash flow projection calculations. And it's what we use in financial planning all the time. What we say to clients is, we say, okay, what is your goal? What is your objective? Where do you want to go to? And we discuss that in a lot of detail and over most of the meeting. And then the rest of it is saying, okay, in your exact circumstances, with your risk profile, with how you feel about investments and pensions and taxes and where you are and who you work with, and your education level or your lack of education, or how involved you want to be. There's a lot of variables that we take into account. And then we say, okay, here's a plan. You start like this, that's great. And then we review it all the time. And we say, okay, we need to increase it, we're on track, we're not, this is what is happening. Because remember, when you're dealing with assets, the valuations that you place on an asset are always behind you. It's always in hindsight. It's never in front of you. And that's one of the challenges, right? Because you're
Yeah.
always valuing what happened yesterday, and what you need is what's going to happen tomorrow.
Correct.
So
Absolutely.
that's a struggle. Yeah. So there are strategies everywhere from £50 a week up to £100 million, and they're different. Huh? They range differently from everyone, but and from country to country. To be fair, different countries have different tax laws, so different vehicles. But from your point of view, at the sort of normal end, I'm not going to call it the low end because I'm in that boat as well. It's as tax efficient as you can get it. That's where you start. You use all the tax efficiencies, and then you step up into different things.
Hey, welcome to the show again. It is your girl Sarah right here on the Sunrise. Now I'm super excited to be here, and a very very good morning to you. We had Timothy Alice who just texted in and said good morning. Well, a very good morning to you as well. Super excited that you're here, and super excited that you're listening in as well. Now if anyone else out there wants to be a part of this show, make sure to text me on 07852 473 473, because that way you can make sure that your opinion, your perspective, whatever it is that you want to share with us, that you can share that with us, because that way it'll help you be a part of this conversation as well. And that's what we do right here on Relax Radio. We focus on you because we obviously really care about your thoughts and your opinions on everything that we talk about. So we would love to hear your thoughts. So make sure you text me on that number. I will repeat it again. Repeat it rather, 07852 473 473, so you can keep in touch with us, and you can text us whenever you feel like it. Okay, so like I said, super excited to be here. And earlier we were just talking about how the advertising industry has sold us this ideal of a perfect woman, and how it has actually affected a lot of the women rather, that are presently living in, that are presently there, who look at these brands, who go to shops and see all these perfect ideals of women, and how it actually affects all of them. Right now, if you want to share your thoughts with us on this matter as well, you can go follow us on our social media, text us on our social media as well, because we will respond, and we would love to hear from you as well. So make sure you go follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, because it would definitely mean that you get informed and you get educated, but it also means that you can share your opinion with me as well. So let's talk about why it's so hard for women to live up to these ideals. So obviously, we've heard a lot of women actually tell us how hard it is to conform to what they feel are punishing ideals, and let's be honest, it is quite punishing, right? Especially, look, if you have so many other things going on in your life, look, if you have a family, if you're suffering from some form of mental illness, if you have other issues that you don't want to talk about, that not a lot of people know about, well, then when these ideals, or when these expectations of you are projected into society, when people say, look, for you to be the perfect mother, or for you to be the perfect woman, you have to be this way, it can actually be very pressurizing. It can be very punishing for a lot of us, right? Because the truth is, no matter how many times you try to resist it, no matter how many times you try to debate it and tell people, look, that's not actually what it happens, even though that's the case, the truth is that the ideals rather, that are conceived, perfected, and sold by marketers are actually very powerful. Like I said, when you're constantly seeing them everywhere, it actually appeals to your subconscious, and it keeps telling your subconscious, or it programs your subconscious to be a certain way. Because look, obviously, when you're seeing this beautiful, say fair complexion, a woman with a fair complexion, with blonde hair and white teeth, when you're constantly seeing women like that, then when you look at yourself in the mirror, you're not gonna feel all pretty, because you will be comparing yourself to all the other women out there. You will be comparing yourself to all these perceived, or um, perceived beauty standards of what actually is beautiful, what actually is perfect. And researchers have actually found these mental tick lists of should be's in advertising companies, which are usually things like, being thin, being kind, being pretty, being, the perfect size, being curvaceous, things like that, right? Because obviously, when you're advertising, you always have this tick list, right? Okay, the woman we're gonna have in our advertisement should actually be a certain height. She should be, she should have a certain figure. She should be have a certain smile. There are different tick lists like that, right? And sometimes at the beginning, it's very, very easy for us to resist it because we're telling ourselves, look, this is not realistic. This is not true. Nobody can actually achieve this. But after a while, no matter how many times you tell yourself, after a while, when you're constantly seeing it, then it actually starts affecting you because, like I said, it starts programming your mind to think a certain way and think, look, there's something wrong with you. You're not you're not what all these beautiful women in advertisements look like, so there's something wrong with you, right? And look, women, obviously, like I said, we resist, and then we've also failed to overcome the influence of these brands that tell us, that we're too wrinkly, or that our hair is too dry, that our parenting is too lax, or that certain parts of our bodies actually lack plumpness, right? Look, there's a reason why so many women go and get plastic surgery. There's a reason why so many women feel like plastic surgery will actually help them achieve these ideals of perfection that is set out for them by society. So whether we like to admit it or not, women actually live with the idea that it is our job to meet these ideals set out by others in society, right? We constantly think we will be more accepted, we will be more validated, especially if we live according to these ideals that are set out for us by the marketing industry. And sometimes it doesn't even matter when it comes to the marketing industry, right? Because when the marketing industry sets out these ideals, even our parents, our people who are very close to us, will start looking at, they too will then perceive this is the perfect woman. So then they themselves will start pushing these pushing these expectations on us, expecting us to be a certain way, expecting us to act a certain way, behave a certain way, wear certain things, right? So like I said, it is a very dangerous and cruel place out there. The world is very cruel. It's really not kind to people who don't fit into their standards of what beauty is, standards of what kindness is, right? So there is a lot of hypocrisy out there as well. So like I said, it's very, very hard for all these women out there to live up to these ideals of perfection. But the thing is, we no longer live in this world in which the only way to achieve some sort of security for women is to make sure, or rather, we live in a world where the only way women can actually ensure security for themselves is actually to appeal to people with power and resources, right? And this means even in the workplace, you have to always, look pretty. Like, okay, how many jobs have you had where sometimes if you're not pretty enough, they don't give you the job. It doesn't matter how many skills you have, it doesn't sometimes matter how many degrees you have. If you're not pretty, then chances are you're not probably going to get that job, right? And the thing is, I know it sounds really ridiculous, I know it sounds like something out of a movie, but the thing is, that is the truth that exists everywhere in the world, not just here in the UK. It exists in the United States of America, it exists in Asian countries, it exists everywhere in the world. So the thing is, there's always also this story, that tells us how to be a good girl. And we're always taught at a very young age to actually match the needs of, men at every stage of our life, because that is what will eventually make sure that our life gets better, right? Because how many of us are actually taught at a young age to, take care of our brothers, take care of our fathers? It doesn't matter if, you know, it doesn't matter if things are very hard for us. It doesn't matter if you're very hungry. You always need to make sure that your father and your brothers are, given food to eat first. Now, this notion of, this notion of dominance, or the dominance of men in certain households actually exists a lot, mostly in Asian countries, right? And I've seen this a lot as well. So for example, if you take bright burning and dowry deaths in India as well. Some of the reasons as to why these things happen is simply because they're not, pretty enough, or they're not, the dowry wasn't big enough for them, or the fact that they put someone else's needs before them. The fact that sometimes women even speak out against some of the injustice that are done to them is seen as a reason as to why we need to punish women, right? And that is the same, right? Because look, even for little girls right now, we always set these ideals of, look, you'll only feel accomplished and you'll only feel good about yourself if you get married, or if you get married and have a family. That's the only way you'll be happy. Even though it's 2021 and people have evolved so much more, we still have these ideals where we're telling young girls, where we're telling females, that the only way you'll feel accomplished, the only way you are going to achieve your worth as a woman, is by having a family, which is quite ridiculous. Because sometimes you can focus on your career, sometimes you can be amazing at what you do, but eventually when you get married, you have to give up everything that you love and do to make sure that you put the rest of your family first, right? And this is the dynamic that was actually marketed back then as well, because they were raised with the fact that a woman's goal in life was to actually make sure they have a good family and to become a good mother. Little girls are actually taught that being a good girl means being gentle, being soft-hearted, being meek and emotional, and the caring qualities that will stand them in good stead. And that these are the caring qualities, or only these sort of caring qualities will actually make them stand in good stead when it comes to bearing children and having a family. So the Fawcett Society actually revealed in a recent report that by the age of 6, girls avoid subjects requiring them to be really, really smart. Subjects like science and maths. And it just sounds like this just sounds like sounds like something very unrealistic, because you wouldn't think in 2021, with all this development, especially because women are actually getting more opportunities that they used to. So many more avenues and paths have opened up for them, that they have a lot more freedom that they used to. You wouldn't still think that these ideals would be punishing, that these ideals would be restraining for a lot of women in society. But the truth is, it actually is, because even though all these ideals, even though we've given women so many opportunities, even though we've helped them progress, these ideals have actually been a part of society for the longest time ever. It's almost like these ideals of how men should be. Men should be strong, men shouldn't be weak, men shouldn't ever talk about their emotions. So those ideals they still exist, right? And because they exist, it's very, very hard to break away from them. Because look, how many times have you heard, like, oh, you're too fat, or oh, you need to dress a certain way, you need to act a certain way to make sure you get a good job, which is actually really, really ridiculous, like I said. Now, anyway, like I was saying, going back to the Fawcett Society, they actually revealed in a recent report that girls, by the age of 6, decided that they wanted to avoid subjects that required them to be really, really smart, things like science and maths. And then and then, like I said, when at a very young age, girls are actually told that looking attractive matters more than being intelligent or whatnot. Because look, we've all heard that ideal of how if a woman was too smart, it would be intimidating for her husband or her partner. And because of that, women just really needed to make sure they weren't smart enough, which is like, what kind of notion is that? You know what I mean? Because that's the kind of thought that anyone would have. Like, why would you stop someone from learning simply because it could intimidate someone else? Because ultimately, the fact that I know there are some people out there who are really smart is the reason we've all evolved, right? And we need to understand that we need people from both genders being open. We need people from both genders being intelligent, and not really, abiding by these ideals that are set out for them, to make sure that our world progresses, right? And this same research report actually showed that third of 7 to 10 year olds believe their appearance is the thing that matters most about them. So basically, a third of the entire amount of 7 to 10 year olds believe that it's very, very important that they have a good appearance. And apparently this focus on appearance also continues into early adulthood, because in the UK, our own data shows that women aged 18 to 24 believe that their most defining characteristic is intelligence, but that at the same time they believe society sees their most defining characteristic as their appearance. So it doesn't matter if you believe you're intelligent, but what society will want to see of you is your beauty, is, the fact that you stay quiet and you always put other people's needs before yourselves. you know and the thing is, when this happens, they think that then these good girls get an opportunity to be perfect moms, because that is basically the zenith of female achievement. And then in turn, these perfect moms show their girls or their girl children to be good, and so it goes on and on and on. So it's basically this vicious cycle that perpetuates the fact that women should live up to these certain beauty ideals, that they should achieve these certain societal expectations, just to make sure that they're likable, accepted, validated, and valued by society. So that's a lot of things that we need to talk about. So make sure you stay tuned to the conversation, because I still have so much more to talk about you with. So make sure you stay tuned. But right now, we'll head into a small break.
Now, there's a lot of conversation around who pays more taxes, if it is the rich or if it is the poor, right? But when you are basically going out and during a day, you go to a restaurant, you have to pay taxes there. If you buy a car, you have to pay taxes there. So why is it even a conversation that, the rich pay less taxes or the poor pay more taxes? Why is it a conversation like that?
Because it's true, the rich generally pay less tax. A rich person walks into a Tesco's or a Sainsbury's, they're not going to get a different bill than another person, right? They're still going to pay the same VAT on those goods, they're still going to pay the same thing. So that's all the same. However, the differences come in if you can pay yourself from your own company, you can structure it in a way that you pay less income tax through paying a bit of salary, paying dividends and so forth, and then also deferring income. Also, your pension payments or contributions can be different. So that increases your tax sort of gap, if that, if you want to use it that way. Where a PAYE person just gets paid salary and bonus. And now those are the most highly taxed sources of income in the UK, definitely, in the UK. We've seen it, right? If an owner of a large public traded company does something wrong, irrelevant of what that company does or how valuable that company is, the stock generally falls into a pool of nothing, right? Because in a public company where the stock is traded openly on the stock exchange, the value of that stock is driven by supply and demand, it's driven by emotion, it's driven by news, it's driven by quite a lot of variables over and above the actual accounting or total net worth of that company. I mean, we've seen it, right? If an owner of a large public traded company does something wrong, irrelevant of what that company does or how valuable that company is, the stock generally falls into a pool of nothing, right? And the company may still have value, it may still be doing quite a good thing.
And it gives them something to look at, and it makes them laugh. It makes them laugh, so that's why I do it.
Oh, and it could be a really good pickup line as well. Ladies will ask, "Hey, excuse me, so why are you wearing something so colorful?" I mean, hey, you can always have something up on your sleeve. I mean, got me thinking. You want to stand out. Why do you want to stand out though so much, especially with these kind of shirts when you're riding? There must be a purpose behind it, right?
Well, when you say a purpose, Nick, what I do, I wear the shirts. Mainly, one, because they're nice and bright, so they make me visible, especially if I'm riding on the road.
Okay. That's very important, right? Because you want cars,
very important. And also, like, people see me in like calves and perhaps shouldn't be saying this on air, I suppose, but in the bar afterwards.
All right.
And it gives them something to look at, and it makes them laugh. It makes them laugh. So that's why I do it.
Oh, and it could be a really good pickup line as well. Girls, ladies who ask, "Hey, excuse me, so why are you wearing something so colorful?" I mean, hey, you can always have something up on your sleeve. I mean, you look like a guy who would do.
You know me too well. You know me too well, Nick.
Hello, welcome back to the show. It is your girl Sarah right here on the Sunrise, and you're tuned into Relax Radio, where we have everything happening all over the world. Everything basically from science to technology to entertainment to economy. We talk about everything right here on Relax Radio. So make sure you stay tuned because we have a lot of fun and interesting content coming your way. Now, while you're at it, make sure you also follow us on our socials, which is Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, because it will help you stay up to date. It will always notify you when we're going live, when we have special events, and when we have special things. So make sure you stay tuned for that as well. And make sure to download our app on the Apple App Store or even Google Play Store, because that way you can always be a part of this conversation. You can always join our conversation, because we always love it when you are a part of this conversation, because Relax Radio is all about you. It's all about these different it's about your opinion, it's about your thoughts, so make sure you stay tuned. But let's get into the conversation we were having a little while back, which is basically about marketing and how advertising has sold us this ideal of a perfect woman, what kind of woman is perfect, and how that has actually had a huge detrimental effect on women in society back then, and even now as well. So that's what we'll be talking about. So if you have any thoughts, opinions, questions that you want to share with us, make sure you text me on 078 because that way you can be a part of the show as well. But let's get into the conversation, right? So modern marketing was initially populated, and it was led almost entirely by men, and they took these imperatives of perfect woman, the perfect woman, what kind of women are perfect, and they ran with them because it was good strategy, right? It helped it helped them to earn a huge profit, because the entirety of society believed that this was how a perfect woman should be. It definitely helped their ideas of how women should be submissive, how women should always be selfless, how women should be a certain way and not have any emotions, or be very emotional and be very nice and caring and kind, basically. So because of that, it was very good strategy for them. It was very profitable for them as well, because it was very easy to influence society at that point of time, because women didn't really have the freedom at that point of time to necessarily object, because like I said, we all know that it took some time for women to get voting rights. It took some time for women to be given equal opportunities, to be considered as important as men. And because of that, obviously, it was very, very hard for them to run by with these tactics. It was very, or rather, it was very easy for them to run by with these strategies and advertise them. And ever since the 1950s, there have been ubiquitous images of smiling housewives, and marketing has honed the particular ideals, crystallized them, painted and decorated them, and then sold those pictures of perfection to women. So it's pretty easy to see how this process works. It's very, very easy to see how this process works, and we all understand how this process works as well, right? And because perfection rather is unachievable by mere human women, they stimulated a bottomless pit of appetite for products, right? Which is why makeup started becoming more and more important. This is why toys based on colors were created. Children would have pink toys, boy children would have blue toys, and from a young age itself they would always teach girls, this is how you should be. Your ultimate goal in life is to get married and have a family. And even the fact that from a young age they were taught to They were taught to, care about their appearance. Now, the best example I can think of this is actually in Anne of Green Gables, right? We've all read that book. That's an absolute classic, and I absolutely love that story. You know how much Anne is very, very worried about her appearance, right? I'm not too sure if it's Josie, but I think it is, or Ruby. I'm not too sure. I tend to get confused between the two, but one of them actually focus a lot on their looks. Her mother tends to, put her hair in and ribbons to make sure it's always curled. And we know that that Anne had a lot of qualms about how she would look when she grew up, especially since she had red hair. So because young children, young girl children, are actually taught about how they would look, are told to care more about their appearance and not necessarily about what they achieve in life. It has always been like that for all women. So going back to these perfect ideals that were marketed, girls could select from toys only in soft pastel and gentle colors, and they received dolls to look after and make up, preparing them for basically this life of caring, kindness, and financial dependence. And um, and, and when it came to young women, they were actually advised by brands to be slimmer, to have softer skin, to have whiter skin, to have shinier, blonder hair, and the straightest teeth, right? And this was all in their service of marital ambition. This was all for them to be in the marriage market. You know, and they were given these shampoos and body lotions in the same pinks and pastels of their childhood toys as well. And moms were shown how to bring up a baby, always smiling, always kindly, obviously never ever tearing their hair out of the sheer frustration, and always putting everyone else's needs before their, and never wondering in and we always never wondered in advertising whether that was right, because all these advertisements was always about the mother always taking care of the children, the mother always taking care of the family, and the father was like absolutely nowhere in sight. So that is what advertising was for women. That is how it was for women. But let's talk about women on the other side of motherhood. To say it quietly, it's basically older women, right? And even now, when it comes to older women, you don't really see a lot of them in advertisements. You don't see a lot of them because they simply do not exist according to these ideals by society, according to these according to these perceptions, to these narratives in society. They simply don't exist. Because they don't exist, because you know you don't really focus on all these older women because they're not really supposed to exist, because women are always supposed to be youthful. That is why there's a lot of anti-aging products. That is why a lot of beauty companies actually focus on anti-aging products, because they want to completely act like women don't age, which is a very normal thing. It's a very human thing, right? We all age. It's a part of life. But the thing is, even when it comes to older women, they were helped, or they were advised to remain as youthful as possible in all these campaigns, because they were focusing on products that helped in anti aging. But they were never actually pictured, right? Even if it was, even if they were trying to promote this whole anti-aging thing, even if they were trying to promote youthful appearances, then chances were they probably got a woman who was young, that didn't look too old, and then used her to promote anti-aging products, because they would never ever use older women in marketing. Now, for the past 70 years or so, this diet of perfectionism, which has been cooked up by advertising men, because 65% of those who write ads are actually men, is what women have been consuming. And now we're all aware of the fact that we're setting up women to fail, which is honestly not surprising, because we've been setting up women to fail on a day-to-day basis, and we know that it can make them unwell as well, right? Because when you're setting out these standards, or when you're setting out these ideals of how women should be, how they should act, how they should always be happy and not have certain emotions, it's actually quite ironic. And it's also very harmful. It has been making a lot of women out there very, very uh very unwell and very sick. So if you actually look at some of the statistics with regard to appearance, with regard to how certain women feel, by the age of 16, more than 50% of girls said or they say that they're very unhappy with their appearance. And two-thirds of women believe that advertising is at least partly to blame for a rise in eating disorders among young women. And this was 37% between 2016 and 2019. And 75% of women in the United Kingdom say that the way models look in advertising makes women feel bad about themselves and are actually very harmful, which is what we were talking about some time back. And the fact that there are pressures of being a good girl reach a peak when women are actually simultaneously parenting, working, and looking after aging parents. Because 81% of women who were surveyed at this stage of life actually said that they feel unable to cope with all that stress and with all of those expectations and ideals that they actually have to go through. So obviously, when we're talking about all these statistics, we're beginning to see that a lot of women out there are actually very, very damaged, and they find all these ideals very, very unhealthy to cope with. And three-quarters of working mothers actually said that they're struggling to cope, and 40% of them describe themselves as hanging by a thread. Now, looking at all these statistics, looking at all these, all these ideals that have been set out for women, does it actually make you feel proud of how much you're making another human being suffer just because you want to profit off of it, just because you want to promote and endorse this ideal where women will only be valuable and worthy to us only if they live according to these certain ideals? Right, because like I said, it is not something to be proud of. It's in fact very detrimental. It is in fact very harmful for a lot of people out there. So because of that, we really need to start addressing these concerns. We really need to start addressing these narratives, and we really need to make sure we start changing them, and we definitely hire more women as well to write ads that are so much more friendly for women, and that doesn't make women feel like they have to live up to these ridiculous expectations of how they should be. Right, so make sure you stay tuned for the conversation, because I'll be here in a few more minutes after this break to continue talking about the advertising industry.
Now, there's a lot of conversation around who pays more taxes, if it is the rich or if it is the poor, right? When you are basically going out and during a day, if you go to a restaurant, you have to pay taxes there. If you buy a car, you have to pay taxes there. So why is it even a conversation that, the rich pay less taxes or the poor pay more taxes? Why is it a conversation like that?
Because it's true, the rich generally pay less tax. A rich person walks into a Tesco's or a Sainsbury's, they're not going to get a different bill than another person, right? They're still going to pay the same VAT on those goods, they're still going to pay the same thing. So that's all the same. However, the differences come in if you can pay yourself from your own company, you can structure it in a way that you pay less income tax through paying a bit of salary, paying dividends and so forth, and then also deferring income. Also, your pension payments or contributions can be different. So that increases your tax sort of gap, if you want to use it that way. Where a PAYE person just gets paid salary and bonus. And now those are the most highly taxed sources of income in the UK, definitely, in the UK. We've seen it, right? If an owner of a large public traded company does something wrong, irrelevant of what that company does or how valuable that company is, the stock generally falls into a pool of nothing, right? Because in a public company where the stock is traded openly on the stock exchange, the value of that stock is driven by supply and demand, it's driven by emotion, it's driven by news, it's driven by quite a lot of variables over and above the actual accounting or total net worth of that company. I mean, we've seen it, right? If an owner of a large public traded company does something wrong, irrelevant of what that company does or how valuable that company is, the stock generally falls into a pool of nothing, right? And the company may still have value and they still be doing quite a good things.
Welcome back to the show. It is your girl Sarah right here on the Sunrise. Now I'm super excited to be here, and it's almost the last few minutes of my second hour. But don't worry, because I'll be here for another hour to actually make sure you're entertained and informed about everything that is going on in the world, but especially in the United Kingdom. Right now, if you're just joining in, if you're just tuning in, welcome to the show. We're talking about the marketing industry and how they've sold us this ideal of a perfect woman, and how it is in fact very punishing, and how it has had a lot of detrimental effects when it comes to women, especially back then, but presently nowadays as well. And not just grown women, not just women, but also little girls, young women, young women as well, right? So that's what we're talking about now. Earlier we were just talking about how these notions have actually existed for a long time, and how we've always encouraged women to actually look at themselves in a way which is very detrimental for them, and expected them to always be happy, and expected them to always make sure that nothing is wrong with their lives, which is a very, very detrimental and harming expectation, harming narrative that we have endorsed and promoted within society. So let's talk about the present system right now. Let's talk about modern marketing, and let's talk about how they've addressed the issue and whether it has actually really helped, right? Look, marketers over the past 10 years have actually made some efforts to take on both these positive, or rather possible negative impact on women, but have so far actually only drummed up this well intentional but rather shallow response, because their response to this whole all these ideals have actually been that women can now be bigger than a size 8, and they can still appear in advertising. Women of color are featured in advertising too, and although they only usually play a role in a lineup of other ethnicities, rarely, if they or quite rarely only, they actually get a starring role. So obviously, even though they've tried to address inclusivity, even though they've tried to address diversity, and they obviously did that with the best intentions in mind, that has been quite shallow, and it hasn't really addressed any of these negative impacts. It hasn't really addressed any of these detrimental impacts it has had on women, right? Now, all the women are obviously well represented by Helen Mirren, but they don't actually appear in any other guys, right? Because all the women would actually be women who still have really amazing skin, who still look very good, and old would just be early 60s. That is what you would consider as older women. And the thing is, older women isn't just women in their 60s, it's women who are much, much older. And that is why there is a need for inclusivity. That is why there is a need for a larger spectrum when it comes to advertising, when it comes to making sure that more women are represented in terms of advertising, right? And another thing is that marketing has actually suddenly become very enthusiastic, and have made it very important for them to re-empower women that it has been criticizing. Now it's ironic, right? Because you were criticizing women all along, but now you suddenly want to re-empower them, right? But what this actually means in reality is shifting attention from telling them how to look, and instead telling them how to behave, right? Because right now advertising is all about, oh, be your own person, be independent, don't get married. But the thing is, as much as you're trying to address some of these ideals, it can be actually very detrimental again, because there might be some women out there who actually want to get married and have a family, but there are some women out there who don't want to get married and have a family as well. So when you're asking them to behave a certain way, but not really giving them the choice to behave in any way they want, then that itself is actually very detrimental as well, right? um like I said, do what you love, break free from societal standards, be independent. Now, those are things that is currently happening right now, because it's dreadfully actually named as empowerment, female empowerment. But the thing is, what advertising industries are trying to promote as female empowerment is not actually what female empowerment is all about. It's actually just another perfectionist stick that they can beat women, that they can beat women with, right? Something, another stick actually that they're using to hold women up to certain standards, right? Because where once women have had to be thin, now they have to be strong. Where women's once had to be beautiful, now they have to be brave. And basically they're told, women are asked to dream big. And it's almost as if they're saying that because we lack the imagination to dream. But rather, the fact of the matter is, we can't dream as much as they want us to, because there is a huge gender pay gap. It doesn't matter if I have the best innovative idea, it doesn't matter if I have the best invention that's going to save the rest of this planet. Chances are I would probably be paid way less for my idea than if a man came up with that same idea, right? So we need to understand that a lot of these issues that are there, a lot of these issues that you're trying to address and trying to make better for women, actually need to be changed structurally, simply because of the fact that there needs to be a lot of structural adjustments that need to be made, because these structures tend to cater to or cater more to the needs of men, to cater and ensure that men are much more protected and benefited and are at an advantage rather than women, right? Because sometimes these messages, or of these campaigns, are actually just a coded way of telling women, just act a little bit more like a man, like, would you? Because that's what you want. Or even more distortedly, the message is that women are somehow at fault for having believed these perfectionist narratives in the first place, right? So, there's a lot of irony, there's a lot of hypocrisy, there's a lot of controversy when it comes to that. And this is why it's very important that we start promoting female owned businesses, because there are new female owned businesses that are coming up, that are actually they're sort of addressing very all these societal stereotypes. They're addressing all these narratives and trying to make sure that they're fighting against this very basic, very detrimental narratives as well. So that is what the conversation was about, and I'm super super excited that I got to talk to you about it, because that is something that a lot of the women in the United Kingdom are actually facing. They're feeling very punished. They're feeling very they're feeling like they're not enough. They're feeling very unworthy because of all these standards and ideals, and that's why it was very important for us to discuss this. So make sure you stay tuned, because in a minute, or just in a few minutes rather, I'll be back to talk about burnout breaks, and why it's important for companies to actually give burnout breaks to their employees. So until then, stay tuned, but I'll be back in a few more minutes.